Welcome back to our third video on using textual evidence in writing. And this is kind of, I would say, the more challenging out of the three. And only a skill I would push to be taught once students have really locked down not only signal phrases, but also colons. The other prerequisite to this skill is knowing how to successfully paraphrase without textual evidence, which means taking all of the evidence and putting it in your own words and still citing correctly. That's a skill that I'll reference at times in this video, but I'm going to try to put together a separate video or even series of videos building that skill, especially differentiating it from summary, things like that. So if I mention paraphrase, just know that that is a term itself, and make sure that you have that skill down before you pursue this type of writing. That being the case, let's get down into our basics like usual. So instead of a formula for this, we're really going to use a checklist. But let me first start off with a basic description of what this is and what it entails. So when I say weaving textual evidence into paraphrase, what I'm saying is you've read something and we've got John Hamm. Let's say you were doing a straight paraphrase. You read an article about John Hamm, and in your own words completely, you summarized it by saying, John Hamm is a great actor, widely celebrated in our culture for his contributions to film and television, and then you did your citation as you needed to. So that is what a paraphrase would be, assuming you had just read some article that had, in summary, said this. Let's say, though, that they gave a description, an adjective that you just found incredible and you didn't want to put in your own words. Let's say you want to basically borrow one of their phrases because it is either unique or is so much better than what you could offer. So I could say, let's say that the article said he was a magnificently magnificent. That's a fun word or a fun description. So this is directly from the article. I have now woven this into my sentence. I didn't introduce it with a signal phrase. I didn't use a colon to introduce the entire quote. I just took these words and then I put everything else in my own words, and this is what we would call textual evidence woven into paraphrase. When we do this, we have to go by this checklist. So let's go through the checklist and see if this works. First off, and this is a little bit harder without the actual article in front of you, is it a successful and worthwhile paraphrase? So before I look at the textual evidence itself, did the rest of this follow the paraphrase rules, which means is it accurate to what the article was saying? Is it in your own words and the structure? So you didn't just change a few words around, you made it your own as a writer. And then was it worthy of putting in your own words, or would it have been better just to use a signal phrase and say the article states and then use that? I think that's something at times I see people trying to paraphrase because they're making up for gaps in these skills. And as a teacher, it's important for you to be on the lookout, because sometimes you see people struggling with paraphrase or using too much paraphrase. It's a sign that you need to go back and reteach these skills and help them build those up so that they only choose to paraphrase when it makes the most sense as a writer. Second thing, and this is a key one, and one of the reasons that this is flexing considerable skill, does the sentence have grammatical integrity? Does this sentence work grammatically, or is it grammatical? Does it have subject and a verb? Does it follow the basic rules? I don't want to go down the laundry list of things that could be potentially wrong in a sentence like this. In this case, we've got our independent clause here, and then we've tacked on this phrase to go with it. But at the end of the day, this is a way of just when you're done, go check. Because sometimes when you weave in things like this, it's easy to weave this in. Let's say you did that. And then we put our quotation marks in this case. John Hamm is a magnificently magnificent. Why that doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. It doesn't have grammatical integrity. So you need to make sure that when you do this, you check your sentences after to make sure they still work. Next thing is, did you put the actual exact or unique evidence in quotation marks to signify, hey, I didn't come up with this. This is from somewhere else. Obviously, we've done that already. And then did you include the citation at the end of the sentence? A reminder, let's say the article used words like film and television, not in this phrasing, or maybe they used the name John Hamm. Is it unique, like magnificently magnificent, or is it an exact term that you could have used a different, but you chose to use what they did? you can't make up his name. You can't call him like Jesse Palm. Like, that's not paraphrasing. It still has to be his name. You don't have a choice. That's why you only need to put quotation marks around things you borrowed, but you had a choice to do otherwise, but didn't. So keep that in mind, like if you're citing statistics, things like that, but check out the paraphrase video that will eventually be up for more questions about that. So just to look at samples and comparison. So let's look at this one right here. So we've got, according to the article, it took years for Ham to recover from the despicable treatment he received from the director. If I want to just do a one-by-one paraphrase with textual evidence, in the article, it described how John Hamm struggled for years with and I said I wanted to take despicable treatment he had to endure from his director. Now you'll note I kept the word director. I do not need to put quotation marks around it. Oops, this is a mistake there. I do not need to put quotation marks around it because it wasn't like his understudy. It was his director. There wasn't another choice. In this case, though, I thought these words were important enough to highlight, and it's also a way of not only integrating textual evidence but making it pop, because you're taking the best of the phrases from what you read. You're giving them credit for it, but you're elevating your writing by weaving them in. So let's go back to our practice board from above, and then we'll be done with this video. The two-step process, and I want to walk you through what I recommend and what I teach in my classroom, is that first off, you have to decide not only what you want to write about, but what are those key or critical phrases. If you're going to weave something into a paraphrase instead of just doing a complete paraphrase or introducing it directly with a signal phrase or a colon, you need to know, hey, I really want to use this phrase, nagging worry. Because first off, you have to decide where it is. Now I need to decide how I'm going to write about it. In this case, I'm going to show you my sample. Despite his considerable talents on the football field, Urschel was often plagued by a nagging worry about the physical consequences of that talent. I almost summarized this entire paragraph right there in this one sentence. So that's one of the reasons this is a more efficient way of doing this. But I wanted to keep this phrase because I just thought it popped and it was strong. I wanted to include it in my writing. I also used my signal phrase there. In the second paragraph, the phrase that I wanted to use was this: usually anxious and aggressive. So let's see the sample again. At the gut level, he knew that something was not right, often feeling unusually anxious and aggressive even after being cleared to play. So, going back through the checklist, was this successful and worthwhile? Deem it yes. Obviously, without the context of a larger paper, it's a little harder to measure that. Do these sentences both have grammatical integrity? Do they, quote, work? Yes. Do I have my actual textual evidence in quotation marks? Here I do, and here I do. And did I include a correct citation and MLA formatting at the end? Yes, I did. So I followed each step on the checklist. Now, I do want to emphasize to end this video, it is difficult to do this skill. It is also one of the skills that probably is the most difficult to model because there's such a personal style that comes with writing in general. And this is something you want to show students, often model it in front of them. And then you also want them to practice. And remember, though, this skill is built upon a lot of prerequisite knowledge, not just grammatically in terms of what makes a sentence work, but also about how to paraphrase accurately and professionally. So you want to build up all those skills first before you embark on this skill, because if you don't, if you skip ahead to this skill, you often will be trying to correct them with the language that doesn't make sense because you haven't given them the tools to understand where they went wrong. So these are the three videos that covered signal phrasing, colon introductions, and weaving textual evidence into paraphrase. These are kind of the bread and butter that I like to work with my students. You could also use dashes, but that's a little bit too specific for a video at this time. And if you have any questions, though, please feel free to reach out. And good luck with your writing, and hope it goes well.